Chapter 8. Continuation of the Tale of the Hard Nut. Now you well know, the judge told the children the next evening, why the queen was keeping their beautiful princess so carefully guarded. How could she help but worry that Lady Mouserings would return and make good on her threat to bite the princess to death? Drosselmeyer's contraptions were of no use against the clever and shrewd Lady Mousewinks, and the court astronomer, who was also the royal family's private astrologer, said that Mr. Purr and his family would be able to keep Lady Mouserings away from the cradle. Therefore it happened that every attendant was ordered to hold a tomcat on her lap and stroke his back to make his job a little less tedious. One night at midnight, one of the attendants woke from a deep sleep. The room was as silent as death. There was not a purr to be heard. One could have heard the woodworms nibbling at the timbers. Then she saw a large, ugly mouse standing on its hind feet near the princess's face. With a frightened cry that woke everyone else, the attendant jumped to her feet. Lady Mouserings, for it was no other, ran into a corner. The cats ran after her, but they were too late. She disappeared into a crack in the floor. Just then, Prillipat woke up from the noise and began crying pitifully. "Thank heavens she's alive," they said. But what horror awaited them! Instead of an angelic little face and a perfect little body, a hideous and huge head was attached to a shrunken and shriveled body. Her sparkling little azure eyes had become staring green eyes that almost looked as if they'd pop out of her head, and her sweet little mouth now stretched from ear to ear. The queen shut herself away in the morning, and the walls of the king's study had to be painted because he would often bang his head against the walls and cry most pitifully. "Oh, what an unhappy monarch am I!" One might think that he might have realized that it may have been better to go on eating his sausages without fat and leave Lady Mouserings and her family in peace under the stove, but he did not. Instead, he put all the blame on the court clockmaker and wizard, Christian Elias Drosselmeyer of Nuremberg, and issued him an order: restore the princess to her former self within 4 weeks, or find a cure that was certain to work, or suffer the disgraceful death of beheading. Drosselmeyer was in no small state of terror, but he trusted in his craft and in luck, and set to the first thing that seemed useful to him. He carefully took the little princess apart without harming her, and examined her internal structure, but all he could discover was that the larger the princess grew, the worse her condition would become. He put the princess back together again and sat down by her cradle in despair, which he was not allowed to leave. It was into the 4th week, Wednesday in fact, when the king looked at Drosselmeyer with eyes flashing in rage and cried, "Christian Elias Drosselmeyer, cure the princess, or die!" He immediately requested to speak with the court astronomer, and was led by guards to him. Both men tearfully embraced each other, for they were close friends. Then they went together into a secret room, where they consulted many books concerning instincts, sympathies, antipathies, and other such mysteries. When night fell, the astronomer looked to the stars, and with the help of Drosselmeyer, who was also quite familiar with astrology, took the princess's horoscope. It was no easy task, for the lines of the stars were so crossed and tangled, but at last it became clear that in order to break the curse and restore the princess's beauty, all she would have to do is to eat the sweet core of the nut Krakatuk. Now, the nut Krakatuk had such a hard shell that you could run the wheel of a cannon over it without breaking it. This nut had to be given to a young man who had neither yet shaven nor worn boots, and he would have to bite it open before the princess and give the core to her with his eyes closed. What's more, he could not open his eyes until he had taken 7 steps backward without tripping or stumbling. Drosselmeyer and the astronomer worked for 3 days and 3 nights. That Saturday, the king had sat down for his midday meal when Drosselmeyer, who was scheduled to be executed the following Sunday, joyously rushed into the room and announced that he had found the means to restore the princess's lost beauty. The king gave Drosselmeyer a fierce bear hug and promised him a diamond sword, 4 medals, and 2 new Sunday suits. "After lunch, I expect you'll get to work on this?" the king added amiably, "and I trust, excellent wizard, that he makes sure that this young man with the Nutcracker took in hand has not had any wine to drink, so he does not trip when he goes walking 7 steps backward like a crab. Afterward, he can drink all he wants. Drosselmeyer was dismayed at this, and with trembling and fear informed the king that they neither begun to search for the nut or the boy to crack it, and it was uncertain whether Nut or Nutcracker would ever be found. The king waved his scepter high above his head in a rage, and roared, "Then the beheading shall proceed as scheduled!" Fortunately for Drosselmeyer, the food had tasted particularly good that day, and the king was in a better mood than usual. This made him more open when the queen was touched by Drosselmeyer's distress, and asked that he reconsider. Drosselmeyer gathered his courage and explained that he had indeed found out how to cure the princess, and had therefore rightfully won his life back. The king decided that Drosselmeyer was stalling with his silly excuses, but after taking a tonic for his stomach, he announced that both the clockmaker and astronomer would set off on foot and not return until they had the Nutcracker in their possession. The queen suggested that they could find the man to do the cracking by regularly placing advertisements in local and foreign newspapers. And here the judge broke off again, and promised to tell the rest of the story the next evening.